So, thank you everybody. Welcome to this long-awaited web panel on career paths in geophysics. I think it's really timely because of the current situation with the pandemic and the industry. So I'm really grateful to have a wonderful panelists who have agreed to come and share some of their expert knowledge with us going forward. One of the things I wanted to remind everybody is that we will have ample time for questions and answers. So to begin with, we'll have the opportunity to have our introduced, and then we'll come back and have them answer a few questions that were prepared for them, and then we'll take questions from the audience and move on from there. So most of our time would be dedicated to getting questions from participants. Please use the Q&A chat box to submit questions as we go forward. As you listen to the panelists, their introductions, you can begin to ask questions. We'll compile those questions and then we will ask those questions later. Without further ado, I think I would let us run the pre-recorded introductions that our panelists had.
Hello, I am Mariangela Capello, and I am thanking the organizers to invite me to this panel. I want to share with you my presentation about my roller coasters so far. So the first question I was asked is, who are you? And I decided to answer with a photo, because I think this particular photo reflects who I am, an enthusiastic, energetic, and happy person. I think that, of course, what you are expecting is a formal answer. And the formal answer is, I am a geophysicist, an author, a leader in energy, and I am a mother and a wife. By the way, I am Italian Venezuelan. What do you do and how you got there? That question is difficult. And I would say that another photo will answer that question, because my career has been a roller coaster marked by numerous ups and downs. It all started when I studied at the university, because I was studying physics. And yes, this is physics. I am a people's person. So this didn't really match what I like to do. So it all changed when I took my first elective in geophysics. Because what they did, the professors took us for a field trip, and that changed my life forever because I love it. And from that moment, I really advanced my career into the geosciences and beyond in energy. Of course, it helped a lot that I was based in Venezuela, the country with top reserves in oil and gas. And it was very appealing to work in the oil industry. My early career and foundational years started in Lagoven as the first woman who supervised seismic crews in the jungles and flatlands of Venezuela. By mid-career, I already was working in the Research and Development Center of PDVSA, the National Oil Company of Venezuela, and I became the project manager for the first 40 seismic project in Latin America. And later on, I say that I love this project, the Field Laboratory of Santa Rosa, because it was a project to pilot technology. More than 7 different technologies were piloted in an oil field. We drilled 3 wells, and I was in the position to lead 52 professionals of more than 9 different disciplines. So I learned how to integrate different technical disciplines and how to lead people. So this project made of me a manager. After that, I was moved to the headquarters of PDVSA to become a reservoir manager of a joint venture. And through the years, I became the general manager of 3 oil and gas assets. There was a political turmoil in Venezuela, and I ended up working for Halliburton as the regional subsurface practice for Latin America. Then we moved to Kuwait, And I was the first regional operations manager female in Halliburton. At the time, Halliburton was not, as you can see, a very diverse company, and I'm very proud of that I became the first female manager. Then it was me who knocked at the door of KOC, Kuwait Oil Company, and they hired me as a consultant, and later on promoted me as consultant one, the highest role for a consultant in the company. And with this photo, I want to tell you that for me, KOC was a platform of success, and I developed an influential leadership because I was not a team leader, I was not a manager, I was not a director, but I was trusted with the capacity and leadership to advance strategic initiatives of the company in reservoir management, training, diversity, and the prestige of the company through professional societies. I am also a distinguished lecturer, an honorary lecturer of SEG and SPE, and that enabled me also to comprehend the different cultures and the importance that accepting multiculturalism and embrace it in terms of minorities has for our industry and our profession. What are my next steps? Well, I will launch my new book in November, this coming November. My new book is on mentoring and sponsoring. Yes, I am an author. And I want to advance sustainability for the geophysicists. I just written an article about how to map the geophysics into the 17 United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And what I am sharing here is the Geophysical Sustainability Atlas wheel that summarizes the effort done. My next steps are to launch my own consultancy services, leveraging on my experience, my knowledge, and my network. As you can see, my career journey so far has been complex and distributed in 3 continents. The last question I was asked was, why you do it? And my answer is, because I like what I do every day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Schrag, and I'm an associate professor in the Geophysics department at the Colorado School of Mines. I'm a computational seismologist by training, and I work on research problems involving seismic imaging, modeling, and inversion challenges. I'm also active in the growing field of humanitarian geophysics, and I'm one of the lead developers of our new Mines Humanitarian Engineering and Science Master's Program. Before arriving at Mines in 2017, I held a number of positions between 2009 and 2017 at the University of Western Australia, which is located in a suburb of Perth, Australia. I started out there as research faculty and then transitioned into a tenure track and then a tenured funded chair position. And during my time at UWA, I was fortunate enough to work on a number of multidisciplinary research investigations, including collaboration with archaeologists and forensic scientists on the Batavia shipwreck and massacre site offshore of Western Australia. Before that, I also worked as a number of years as a project geophysicist, undertaking projects in near-surface geophysics and geotechnical fields for Hager Geoscience, which is a small woman-owned business located in the greater Boston area of Massachusetts, US. I'm also very active within the SEG, and I've chaired a number of committees, including the Committee on University and Student Programming, the Field Camps Committee, the Travel Grants Committee, and the Geophysics Editorial Board, where I'm the current Geophysics Editor-in-Chief. So where will geophysics workforce go within the next 10 years? I think it's a very interesting and important question. I think that geophysics and more broadly geosciences will be experiencing a growing disruption from our current business model through advances in applications of machine learning and sort of the research and ensuing applications that will continue to develop from this field. And you may have heard from some people that geoscientists will be artificially intelligent or AI'd out of the room because their skill sets can be replaced by machines. But I don't fully agree with these comments, because I think the experience that geoscientists hone in their ability to develop geophysically and geologically informed solutions to complex challenges and Earth problems, or subsurface problems, will continue to be invaluable going forward. And I'm showing here a graphic that illustrates Palmer's take on the growing relationship between, say, our geophysical domain expertise in the fields of mathematics and computer science. And I think that a key change is that geoscientists will increasingly be required to speak the language of computer science and mathematics so that we can collaborate with computer scientists and mathematicians who are working in our organizations to achieve these complex tasks and projects at ever shortened turnaround times. So I think it's fairly clear that speaking the language will involve some capability in programming and handling data analytics. There'll also be opportunities for those who are working more interdisciplinary between these various disciplines, these data scientists, who really study to develop core skills between all three of these disciplines. So overall, I think the future is bright for student and early career geophysicists. However, you should be prepared and should be developing the skill sets that you'll need in today's and tomorrow's workplace.
Hello, my name is Manika Prasad, and I'm a professor of geophysics at Colorado School of Mines. I've been in geophysics, in the profession of geophysics, since about 30 years. So it's been a long time since I've been doing what I do. And of course, as you might well imagine, I've held numerous jobs. Starting off during my student years, I worked as a student help. I worked in the farmer's market selling vegetables. I worked at in the docks, the ship, sailing ships, cleaning ships in exchange for sailing lessons. And then when after I graduated, I worked in the Indian Institute of Geomagnetism as a research fellow. I went on to work as a postdoctoral research trainee in the mineral physics group at University of Hawaii, as a research associate at Stanford University, and then finally finding a home here in Colorado at Colorado School of Mines as faculty, which is where I've been since 2005. Is that this profession is one of the best that you can find. Here is my travel as a geophysicist in 1 year. This is last year in 2019, a little bit of 2018, as the distinguished instructor for short courses for SEG. The red dots are where I traveled in 1 year. You get to see beautiful sights like these. This is a sunset of the West Coast in Australia. You get to eat amazing foods. These are a series of sweet dishes in Saudi Arabia. And you get to meet amazing people. And they will always leave an impression on you. However, this profession will also scar you. If you see a formation, you will want to shimmy up and see that little piece of mineral that is shining out there up close and personal. If you have a visitor with you, the best thing you can do for them is to take them winter camping in the Rocky Mountains. You see a fjord here. This is in Ensenada, Mexico. And you think of the volume of water that's coming in and the pressure that's required to build a blowhole, as you can see here. You see a beautiful square, as you do here in Argentina, and you wonder, what would the signals look like if you put geophones in this square and you measured the level of human activity, of the cars, of the traffic in this little square. You see an equipment, you visit a colleague's lab, you see a piece of equipment and you think, I know exactly where that thing might fit in my lab out here. So regardless of what you do, you will find enough experiences, enough examples, in life, in the real world out there, where you find yourself applying your geophysical knowledge to whatever problems are thrown your way. And so I'm very glad to talk to you today and look forward to hearing your voices as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Blair Schneider, and I'm an Associate Researcher and Science Outreach Manager for the Kansas Geological Survey. I've been in the geophysics workforce for about 10 years now, and I've held a variety of different positions. I've worked with the National Park Service with the Midwest Archaeological Center, where I collected geophysical surveys at national parks across the Midwest. I've interned with oil and gas companies in the past, and I've done a lot of work with nonprofits. I'm past president of the Association for Women Geoscientists. I used to serve on the board for their foundation, and I've also done a lot of work with the Society of Exploration Geophysicists and the American Geophysical Union. I did a postdoc at the University of Kansas, and that was actually with their Center for Teaching Excellence. And that postdoc was really focused on looking at STEM education reform and broadening participation in STEM. And that postdoc really helped prepare me for the position that I'm in now, because a lot of the stuff I'm doing today deals with public outreach and science communication. I think that the geophysics workforce has changed a lot just in the 10 years that I've been a geophysicist. Moving forward, I really think we're going to start to see a lot more emphasis for using geophysics for humanitarian efforts. And that includes archaeological, forensic, urban, and environmental applications. I really think that there's going to be a lot of issues that we need to address in the future. And so geophysics will play a big role in that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellie Ardakani. I'm a geophysicist by training and an energy tech entrepreneur by profession. Currently, I am the co-founder and CEO of Meta, a tech company focused on merging latest digital technologies to energy and mining sectors to increase return of investment on both data and human capital. I fell in love with geosciences in my undergrad when I took a course in formation evaluation. I thought it was just so amazing to be able to predict what exists in subsurface just using well logs. Born and raised in Iran, which its economy runs on oil, I got drawn into petroleum industry very quickly. After finishing up my master's in petroleum geology at University of Tehran, however, I found many obstacles for women in my class to get into Iranian oil and gas sector, to do what I love to do as a job. So I decided to immigrate to Canada, and I completed my PhD in exploration geophysics at the University of Alberta. During and after my PhD, I worked as an R&D geophysicist for multiple companies in oil and gas, both on the operator and service side. After a couple of years, and about 3 years ago, I quit my job because I felt I can do more. I felt I can have a larger impact on my industry and my community and my profession if I could have built solutions that are solving their pain points. So I co-founded Meta. I love my job as an energy tech entrepreneur. As every day I get to practice how to be comfortable with what makes me uncomfortable. If you're coming out of school, if you're a young professional or in transition, or what you do as a profession or job is not feeding your soul, and you have a vision and you have the resilience to be an entrepreneur, maybe entrepreneurship is the way forward. I encourage you to give it a shot. I guarantee you will not regret it. You will learn so much every day, and you get to wear multiple hats every single day. And I guarantee there is no dull day ever in this journey.
Hi, my name is Renee Richards, and I'm a geophysicist with the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, which is part of the Department of Interior. I've been a professional in the geophysics workforce for about 8 years. I've had an opportunity to work in different roles in different size companies. And a lot of my experience was gained through internships while I was a student. I received my Bachelor's of Science at Colorado School of Mines in Geophysical Engineering and my Master's of Science in Geophysics at Texas A&M University in College Station. I've had internships in mining industry, software, environmental, and oil and gas. Ultimately, these experiences led me to a career path in the oil and gas industry, where I worked for Chevron in the San Joaquin Valley, part of California. I moved to a regulatory role with my current agency, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, about 4 years ago. My agency oversees the offshore oil and gas production from platforms in federal waters. My job specifically is not very glamorous, but it's necessary work to ensure that things are being done safely and we have conservation of resources in the Pacific region. I perform tasks like subsurface mapping, permit reviews, letter writing, and data management. My agency is very small compared to many agencies and departments within the federal government. If you're a geophysicist looking for positions and how you may find government jobs, there's so many agencies that do great work in the earth sciences. For example, there's other agencies within the Department of Interior, like the United States Geological Survey and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or with the Department of Defense and the Army Corps of Engineers, and many, many more. I'm speaking specifically to the federal government, but there are many earth science and physical science positions within state governments as well. When thinking about the future, I believe that there's going to be many job opportunities and careers in the government sector for the next few years. As industries are shifting away from oil and gas to more renewables, there's also a shift that's going to happen in the workforce. As scientists, we need to be on the forefront of these initiatives. And as someone who works in the regulatory realm, there seems to be an increasing amount of regulation and oversight to projects, and I don't think that's going to go away. In the most recent months, I've noticed a significant increase in hiring within the federal government. This may be due to a bunch of reasons, like trying to fill positions with the possibility of leadership change, attrition, or grabbing up industry experts that may have been furloughed or let go during COVID. But it makes me think that there are opportunities for students entering the workforce to gain experience. I'm happy to try and answer questions you may have about the federal government and any tips and tricks about how to apply for those government jobs.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing from. I hope everyone is keeping safe and healthy. My name is Katja Akentieva, and I'm the Vice President of New Ventures and Business Development for TGS. I started my journey in industry just over 20 years ago. I grew up in a small town in Russia, and I studied geophysics in Moscow State University. Very early, I realized that what I really wanted is to have an adventure in my life. I wanted to travel and see the world. I wanted to understand and work with different cultures. I love working with people, and I'm an avid learner. So I thought that practicing geoscience in the oil and gas industry was going to get me what I wanted, and it surely did. So I started my industry career with Schlumberger. I was literally helicoptered in the middle of the North Sea on my day one, and I worked in the field for a couple of years. It was tough, but it was fun, and the experience was truly invaluable. Getting to understand how data is collected was truly important. And from there, I moved to Canada, where I got involved in a variety of data processing technologies. I learned how to manage technical teams. I got exposed to the commercial side of the business. And that's when I realized that in order to expand my choice of career opportunities, I should consider a business degree. So I went ahead to get an MBA in Holland, and I had to put my life on hold with a full-time job and studying for 3 years, but it was worth it. So I joined TGS, where I am today, just over 10 years ago, and I have held a variety of leadership roles in the company since. And one of those tremendous opportunities brought me to Houston 5 years ago. I was put in charge of growing the onshore portfolio for TGS. And today I have a new challenge, which is to set up a new strategic path for the company in the renewable energy space. So all I can say is that I continue learning every day. I continue exploring the world with work and also with my family. And most importantly, I work with some of the most amazing, interesting, smart people in the world, and it truly energizes. It really drives me. With respect to what I think about geophysics 10 years ahead, I strongly believe that our domain expertise, geophysics, has a major role to play in the energy transition. We understand the subsurface, and therefore we can and we will contribute. And if any of you would like to speak to me in more detail on that subject matter, you're very welcome to. In the meanwhile, I look forward to our session. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much for these awesome introductions. This is fabulous. So 2 things that I want to highlight here is for our participants and our listeners. I'm sure we have participants from different parts of the world, and you may notice that we are a little bit North American skewed at the moment, but we hopefully your background that everybody has here is going to be able to speak maybe to your own specific circumstances or your own specific locality, and please do not hesitate to ask those questions that would help us probe even further. So one of the things that that got me thinking as I was listening to these introductions, and I think I would start with Jeff, is when we look at geophysics as a discipline, what would you say is the working credentials? What level of education is optimal to be a geophysicist?
I think that there are many different positions, and there's many different credentials that one needs for those positions. I think that there are a lot of exciting positions just starting out where, you know, a bachelor's degree, when you're running field crew or you're on field crews, you're acquiring data in some very interesting places around the world, as our panelists have shown. I think that's a great way to, you know, cut your teeth and understanding some of the technology that we use every day in the field. And then that goes right up to, you know, having a master's degree in geophysics or geoscience when you're working on handling the data, you're integrating more with teams, all the way up to, if you're looking at as a research leader, having PhD qualifications that allow you to, you know, do independent research for your company or for your whatever organization you might be in.
Thank you so much for that. I guess the follow-up question that I have about this is, we saw, especially Manika kind of shared all the different jobs and the different experiences that she had going on, and so I got curious. When did you first get your first pure geophysics job? Like the task that really required you to use your geophysics skill or your geophysics ability. Manika, I'll throw that at you since you inspired this question.
So my first job that required geophysics knowledge was after my PhD. When I joined the Indian Institute of Geomagnetism, I took field surveys out with a team of people to do geomagnetics in various areas and locations in India, mostly rural areas, where we stayed with with the local population. We got kids to help us with field work and so on. During my studies, I was studying in Germany, and as a foreign student, there were no opportunities for us to get internships or any other jobs. And so we did, you know, whatever jobs came the way. And part of it was selling vegetables in the farmer's market, which was fun.
Okay, thank you so much. Renee, do you wanna kind of chip in here also to share what your first geophysics-based job was, maybe?
So I've had a lot of different internships, and those internships may have, you know, been called the geophysics type of career path, but I didn't really get my first geophysics job until I worked for Chevron in San Joaquin Valley. Before that, I had other positions that were geoscientists, or, you know, you do more data management, or, you know, there's a lot of multidisciplinary things. Or like I had said in my intro video, it's not always all glamorous. So I'm very, you know, excited to be part of this panel, because so many of you have like so many exciting experiences being in the field and all these things. So my first real experience was working for the oil company as a geophysicist, but I did have other experiences before where you kind of have to trudge through some of those other, you know, other different types of jobs that may not be directly aligned with geophysics, like data management, or just, you know, data acquisition, that is sort of geophysics related, but not quite using your whole degree or using your whole, you know, vision of what you think geophysics is. So when I was with Chevron, I was part of an exploration team, and looking at 3D seismic and doing the you know, formation evaluation workflow that Ellie had mentioned as one of her inspirations of going into geophysics. So that was my first real job.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Ellie. Well, I'm gonna pick on you now to tell us a little bit about your first geophysics experience.
So I think because, you know, we're kind of like the millennial category, right? So we come in, and the first thing that hits our face is that, okay, you got your degree, you're gonna get a corporate job. And that's literally how it works, and we get a corporate job. So I had multiple positions. I had multiple positions within operators in oil and gas, like oil and gas companies, and also on the service side, where they were actually acquiring geophysical data sets. You know, I went to rigs, I collected geophysical data sets, and it's all good. But at the same time, I think for me, the piece that was missing, nobody was talking about, you know, entrepreneurship. There are some other ways that you can apply your knowledge, and you can do way more than just having a corporate job. Most of my jobs were research and development, so I would develop algorithms, and I would see it through the company that would get commercialized, and it would, you know, create a wealth of knowledge and money for the company. But at the same time, I felt like I want to be the person who is commercializing these algorithms. So I guess it's just a kind of a narrow way of schools, especially with the curriculums that they have in science. Nobody talks about how to run a business, how to make a business out of the science, or the thing that you're really passionate about. And I think, you know, all those corporate kind of experiences, they get you ready to go for the second phase. And I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you so much. So let's ask Maria Angela where her first geophysics.
My first geophysics
work, yes.
Yes, I will tell you, my first geophysics work was truly difficult because I was sent to the field, and they gave me a jeep with a stick, you know, like not automatic, and I didn't know how to drive it. And they told me, it's your problem. So I couldn't even go to my hotel with that. So I drove in the first gear about 40 kilometers to get to the place without changing the gear. It took me like 3 hours, but I get there. And for me, the most difficult thing was also, you know, these kind of details that anyways are needed. And that was in the jungle. And it was a hilly place, very muddy. And it was, for me, a new experience that I never have been in a place like that before. And thinking backwards, we should have been given, you know, training to do that. And nowadays, it would be unthinkable to send someone, you know, to the field like that. And I learned it, and it was an anecdote I will always remember. Several years after that, I got stuck in the mud, and I was still not very skillful with the winch and all that, and I was alone, and it was already 6 p.m. So I called on the radio, And I noticed that the people, on the other side, they were giving me instructions on how to use the winch. And I had to connect my Jeep to a tree to pull it out from that. And well, at the end I succeeded, but it took me like 2 or 3 hours. Next day, when I went to the office, everybody was waiting for me, and when I entered, everybody was clapping because I didn't know that all of them were around the microphone and they were beating each other, telling, "Do not make her nervous, do not make her nervous." And they were they appointed only one single individual to give me the instructions so that I could pull out my Jeep from that. And that is how I started. It was, like a field experience. But I guess that every geophysicist has to go to the field to learn the trenches and to understand what it takes and what are the uncertainties in the data acquisition, and how to believe or not the data.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is fascinating. So this brings me a little bit to Katja. So when you were doing your introduction, you talked about going back to do a management course. For what prompted you as a geophysicist to go back to do an additional course to get management training? Why did you think you needed that? Can you?
Yes, thank you. Very good question. I think at some stage I realized that I really wanted to broaden my career choices, and I was lucky enough to start practicing geophysics at the gate from the university where I was hired by Schlumberger, and you had to have something unique to actually get the position because those days in Russia things were quite tough. So when a company comes to look for students, they look for they have 2 spots and they have thousands of people to apply. So it wasn't necessarily the academic skills, it was about the experiences that you had that really were valued. And so for me, it was experience of working in research, working on a research vessel. That's what got me there, not knowing what deconvolution is, for instance. And as I found myself also working in the field, I thought, how am I going to use my skills, my academic skills? Where am I going to apply it? I was working in the field and learning very different, getting very different experiences to what I originally anticipated to be doing at the very early stage. And as you progress, you think of those experiences and how you build on them. How do you use them to really expand your choice? And I really wanted to get exposed a little bit more to the business side, understand how can I, with my geophysical knowledge, with the data I work with every day, how can I really make an impact to the company's success, to the shareholders, ultimately work with my teams and help them to excel in their roles and their careers. And it definitely gave me that broader horizon. And I think without pairing those two skill set, those two educational sort of platforms, I probably won't be able to be practicing what I am practicing now. So it certainly helped.
Thank you. Indeed. I mean, I think what I'm beginning to notice is that everybody is a geophysicist, but there's so much difference in the specifics that everyone does. And this kind of is nudging me towards Blair because she has a very unique career as a geophysicist and a science communicator. Can you tell us a little bit how this came about?
Yes, absolutely. So I started off, I'm a near surface geophysicist, and so I use my research to look at archaeological and forensic applications. And my very first year in grad school, I started working with the National Park Service, and it was a steep learning curve because I learned all of the geophysics at once. It wasn't just radar, it was radar, mag, EM, everything. But I also saw quickly that I had to communicate with the public every day. We were at national parks. People would come up and ask us what we were doing. They wanted to learn what was happening, what puzzle were we solving. And so it was really clear to me that if I wanted to continue in this path, I had to learn to talk about what I do with anyone. So that became a really major focus. That's what roped me into working more with nonprofits and doing more outreach, because that was a constant practice of those skills. And now it's actually led me into a career where I still get to do the geophysics. I'm still working with archaeologists and tribes and police every week. But I'm also getting to work with legislators and start to impact policy because of all of that science communication training that came along with it.
Thank you. All right, so now I want to ask a question that I think I'll just have whoever wants to answer go first. But basically, I'm interested in as you developed your academic career. So I'm guessing that most of the participants are students who are curious about what to do going forward. And so if you had to think of some of the options or the opportunities that exposed you to these career options, how did you make this decision or this switch to become a geophysicist? And I'm saying this because, of course, the geoscience discipline is a little bit more broad. And so there's a lot of overlap. And sometimes we get caught up in the nitty gritty of, oh, I'm a geophysicist, I'm a geochemist, I'm a geo this, I'm a geo that. What would you advise students who are trying to figure out where their position is? Maybe I should start with the professors in the room. Manika.
So talking of geophysicists, let me put it out there. I started as a geologist. That was my undergraduate degree, geology and chemistry. And before I went to geology and chemistry, I was doing biology because I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And that dream shattered when I cut through all the vital organs in my first dissection, realized I don't have the aptitude for this. Rocks do not cry when I beat them. So I took on geology at a friend's advice that there's a new field out there which you might not have heard of as geology. And geology was fascinating till I heard about plate tectonics. And that just blew my mind. So I started doing marine geology because I thought that's where it would lead me to study plate tectonics. And what I realized was that I am missing the math and physics. In those days when I was studying, geology was very descriptive. And I loved physics and maths. And so I started, what else is out there in affiliated fields. And partway during my master's degree, I switched to geophysics and I started doing a thesis in geophysics, not realizing that I would have to do a second thesis in geology. So I did 2 theses, one in geophysics, one in geology, and then switched completely to geophysics. So you have to find your passion. Even within geofields, there is so much out there. What I've learned is keeping your mind open allows you to listen to someone who's talking about something very different. And you find, oh, wait a minute, that might be my solution. So that helps. The one feature, one trait that helps you most is tenacity. You have to be single-mindedly stubborn about what you want. I've had professors tell me in Germany, I was not good. I was not good enough like the German or the Europeans. I was substandard student. And I said, well, okay, that's what you think. I will show you differently. The more they said I couldn't, the more I said, I can, and I will show you. That's what it takes. So thank you for that question.
Thank you for sharing that. I see Blair had her hand up. After Blair, we'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I talk to students about this a lot, and I want to make sure we emphasize that if you're studying geology, you're studying the earth. You're studying how the earth works. You can't study how the earth works unless you look at every science, right? You can't just study rocks unless you understand chemistry, and you can't study hydrology if you don't understand biology or physics. And so it's really important that if you're going to get a geoscience degree that you also expose yourself to the different fields of science, because you are inevitably going to be doing interdisciplinary work no matter what career field that you go. That would be my number 1 piece of advice, is explore the different fields of science. I never took biology past 9th grade. I really regret that today, because there's just so much cool, fascinating stuff that's happening in the geo-bio fields. So take them all.
I actually wanted to add to Blair's point, and it is be current. Look at the trends, monitor those trends in your fields. We talk a lot about machine learning, digitalization. We talk a lot about sustainability now, about different energy domains and different energy mix. Take the opportunity to expand and learn more. Get certificate in other fields that are related that will really help you to add to that portfolio of skills that you currently possess. Take the time to learn.
Thank you. Jeff, I can't wait to hear from you.
Well, I have a parallel story to Manika. So I started out in astrophysics, and so it's another way to view the Earth and celestial objects at a much larger scale. And at the same time, we were doing quantum. And so I was studying two very end members, but it didn't really with me resonate because it wasn't at sort of the field scale that we have experience in geophysics. So I took a punt one summer and was on a induced polarization crew doing gold exploration up in northern Canada in the swamp, running away from bears and mosquitoes. And I just sort of fell in love with just the idea that we can apply the physics knowledge that we learn in the classroom to make quantitative estimates and images of the Earth. And based on that experience in a class in earthquake seismology, I went and spent 2.5 years studying earthquake seismology, making pictures of lithospheric structures with earthquake waves. I then changed directions a bit and worked in Boston in near surface environmental and geotechnical, helping to run crews on a whole range of projects dealing with almost every type of near surface geophysical investigation that you'd want. And then I realized that I really liked and missed the computational side of things. And so I went to Stanford and completed a PhD in a consortium there on computational seismology. And I think that that's what I sort of really clicked with finally. And the idea that you could get 100 computers working together to help solve one big imaging or inversion problem, I think that's sort of amazing thing that we can have the ability to do that with a very limited code set that you write. And so from that, I sort of found where I wanted to go, but it took the better part of a decade to get there. But I used each different opportunity as a chance to explore a different field to gain knowledge. And what Katja said in terms of developing a portfolio of skills, each one of those different positions, added to the portfolio such that when it comes to handling problems now, I can always go back to my old toolkit and pull out the experiences that I had and use them to address problems in a new way.
For that clarification, Renee, do you wanna add something to this?
The only thing that I have to add is that, we have two panelists here from the Colorado School of Mines, and I attended Colorado School of Mines. And so when I first attended college there, I didn't even know what geophysics was, or if I wanted to go into any geoscience or anything like that. And one of the advantages of getting a degree at Colorado School of Mines is that you get a degree kind of in engineering. So it's geophysical engineering. And that has helped me in my career have a little bit more versatility, because even though I'm in the oil and gas sector, it's also helpful to have that engineering type background, or have an understanding of statics and dynamics and how it relates to the Earth. And those types of skills, there's a question here on the chat about what does it mean to be an engineer in the geosciences, and so there's tons of overlap there. And that's one thing that I have found benefit from, is having having some of those extra math and physics classes and engineering type classes that help me become a bit more multidisciplinary in my work, or pick up projects that that I've been, a little bit more familiar with from having some of that engineering background. So like others have said, how biology relates to, geochemistry and all these different things. It's always helpful to have some other interests, have some other background, and you never know where those types of opportunities lead you. It's not like you know, I chose one, you know, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a geophysical engineer. What does that mean? But it's really just that you kind of pick up these other projects, or you say, oh, you know, I kind of know about this thing, and it gets added to your plate, or you get, you know, recommended, or whatever it is. And then that changes, and you pivot. And so there's always opportunities that come out of experiences.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding, I guess the message I'm getting here is that people need to be a little bit more multidisciplinary and not just stick to just one thing, but try to kind of expand their horizons and look a little bit further afield. So this brings us to we already have a lot of questions in the chat. So I want to take a break from pre-prepared questions and kind of give room for us to answer a few of the questions that the participants have been asking. And for this, I think I would need Shelley's help. So, Shelley, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do we have some questions that are ready to go that we could start answering from the participants?
Absolutely. The first one is, in E&P industry, do we have more opportunities in near future as development geophysicists compared to exploration geophysicists? Maria is holding up her hand.
I would like to answer this question because as the promoter of geophysics for production, I think that yes, the answer is a big yes. Actually, in many operators, still geophysicists belong only to the exploration department, whereas they could help so many others, from maintenance to production, to the EOR, to monitoring, to integrity of the facilities and wells. Geophysicists can help a lot in the new oil and gas industry, in particular for the CO2 sequestration and the optimization of production for environmental concerns, monitoring contamination, preventing oil spills, monitoring also, for example, the tanks farmed, you know, for the oil and separators. Geophysics has the capacity that goes, I would say, beyond your characterization of the container, which is a rock, to understanding the fluid and where it goes and how it is produced. And this is why we as geophysicists need to focus more on the fluids than on the rocks. And that is valid for hydrogeophysics and the new geophysicists that need to work in the oil and gas industry. Thank you for that question, because that is the geophysicist of today and of the future. Thank you.
I'm going to chime in real fast there too. Just as from a near surface perspective, I really think that there's going to be a lot more work needed in all varieties of near surface going forward. The problem right now, and the struggle for me personally when I'm looking for a career, is there's not as much money. There's not as much demand, right, for environmental geophysics right now, or for in archaeology, there's no money doing geophysics. So you really have to go out and get that research funding and do that yourself. But I really think that's going to be changing in the future, and there's going to be a lot more demand for that. So having that skill set of being a developmental geophysicist and applying it to those specific applications will be really important.
Thank you, Blair, for clarifying that. Katja also has a hand.
Just to support that argument, it's a known fact that when things slow down in industry, innovation, creativity really excels. And I think we're going to see that. We're going to see that again, as we have done in previous down cycles. But what it also does, it really enables those new technologies to be commercialized and ultimately reduce and optimize the cost efficiency. And that's what it's going to take often in many of those technologies to really get going. So absolutely, I do also believe and support that argument that there's going to be a lot of innovation coming up. And I think that development path is going to make a part of that new world.
Thank you so much. Talking about innovation, I think it's time we brought in Ellie because she is an entrepreneur. And so this is basically speaking to those skills. So Ellie, do you want to share a little bit how you figured out how to use your training as a geophysicist to get into the entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, I would want to say that nothing happens overnight. So if you think that you're going to, if you're a student and you're graduating in 6 months and you think that, oh, you know, I'm going to go from here to there, that's not how it works. The way to getting there where you feel like you're rewarded for what you do is way more spiral than what you think. And that's just based on all the conversation that we have in this panel. You can see how it is. But just to the point, and like the question, and also what Katja just mentioned, every time that we have a downturn within especially energy, especially oil and gas, there are more and more opportunity coming up. And one of those things are the digital transformation. We've been talking about digital transformation for a while now, but the reality is that most of this is just talking. And it's like upper management talking about it, but the people who are the workforce, they don't see that much of an effect. So, and that's a segue to entrepreneurship. So if you know a processes, an algorithm, a product that can actually replace the old ways of doing things, that is something that you can capitalize on. That is something that the industry needs right now. If you have an algorithm that can, increase the return on investment on a data that is captured already and is sitting in, on hard drives and cloud, and bring it in and make people who are working in these companies more efficient in accessing the data, using the data to provide insight, better insight for the development of the fields, and etc. That is the way to go. So, the skill set that I learned working for the corporates, and also 3 degrees that I got. So my bachelor degree, which by the way is multidisciplinary, so geology, petroleum geology, and then geophysics. All of those skills that I developed through that 10 years of university, and then all the years that I worked in corporate, it led to a point that I was like, I know what the problem is. Can I solve the problem? And for me, it's mostly related to human factor and mostly related to digital technologies, because I think at least in the industry that I am in, there are a lot of talkings and there are less doings. And, the downturns are going to change that view because people want to get more efficient, organizations want to cut costs. So you have an opportunity there to capitalize on your skills and introduce something new. One more point that I want to make is that, now that I run a company and I always hire from the people who have the attitude of learning. It doesn't matter if your degree is in geology or geophysics or a niche in geophysics, as long as that you're willing to learn, as long as that you're curious and you want to explore. Those people are the best people to hire because they have the attitude of pushing themselves forward. I had hires that had no coding skills, and now they are software developers. So if you want to do that, it is possible.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Do we have...
You are muted.
Oh, sorry. Can we have another question from the participants?
Yes. What is the future plan for the expansion of geophysics field in Africa? Maria.
From what I have seen, in Africa, the main countries that are traditional producers like Algeria, Nigeria, they will keep producing from onshore and their offshore. But there are newcomers into the market from Africa, in particular Mozambique and Tanzania, and they have gas offshore. So what kind of skills will be needed for those kind of geophysicists? We will need integrators, people able to expand the knowledge of what they learned at the university in order to utilize technology immediately. So I would suggest that the geophysicists currently in Africa make all efforts to understand also reservoir engineering, because offshore engineering requires a lot of integration, not only to look at the seismic and the well logs, but as well as understanding the production mechanisms and optimizations to have oil production coming from different wells concentrated in single platforms. So this is what we can see in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, it looks like Manika would like to answer this.
Jeff, did you want to add to that?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Just one other comment is that I think one of the largest challenges that any block of countries are going to face on Earth in the coming decades is groundwater shortage, and especially sub-Saharan Africa is one of those countries that is not well positioned due to not as easily found resources at the same time as increasing population growth. So I think there will be a necessity for hydrogeophysical investigations and managing and monitoring of groundwater aquifers that are available in Africa in the coming future. So I think that's something that we'll definitely see a growth in.
Yes, well, thank you, Jeff. Also expanding beyond the oil and gas, I thought the question was about oil and gas. There is the mining. And what I have learned also is that the mining is also undergoing the digital transformation. And because of that, there is a lot of automation in mining that will displace many of the traditional skills needed. So as you can see, perhaps the most important skill for a new graduate will be the ability to relearn things more than specific knowledge. But as Ellie was saying, that curiosity and what Manika was saying, that tenacity, what Blair was saying, that variety of subjects. So this is something very much needed in the fresh graduates. An open mind, a flexibility, a resilience to face ups and downs.
I just wanted to actually mention one more skill set, which is close to what Blair has been chatting with us about. With Africa having this tremendous resource potential, one of the challenges, I think, for the companies for international corporate, multinational companies to come and explore is also making sure that there is a right regulatory framework in those countries that enable stable, transparent regimes for companies to invest. And I think part of that will drive the much needed skill set, which any geophysicist can actually pivot to, is communication skills, public relations, stakeholder relations, government liaison, working with governments and helping them to understand how to put those regimes in place. It's going to be very important in the success in that region.
Thank you so much. And just to kind of put in perspective, we also have to kind of, when it comes to Africa, which is a continent with so many different countries, we have to first of all be mindful of that. And the second thing is there is a skill set that is on the ground, and it's time that those skill sets be amplified, because for a long time, it's been importing talent as if local talent was not available. So I think starting from kind of taking advantage of local talent would also be an important part of this process. Okay. There was a question, I don't know, Manika or Katja was going to answer the next one.
The question says, given all the different roles represented by these excellent panelists, I wonder if there is any commonality about which jobs have been most personally rewarding. Manika, do you want to go first?
Sure. So the most rewarding job by way of personal reward was cleaning sailing boats so that I get sailing lessons. That was by far the coolest job. but I think right now what I'm doing is really what I like to do. I do research. I work with students. I work with research faculties, with other colleagues. And if you had asked me when I started my career, is this what you want to do? I would have said, no, I do not want to do this. I want to be out in the field. I want to be doing field work. And you slowly transition into what you find. You find your niche. And once you find it, you know, this is where you feel at home. And I really love what I do. And as Mariangela said in the beginning, a career is a roller coaster journey. You will have ups and downs. You will have jobs which you absolutely don't like for the working conditions. But what I found is every work that I've done has taught me something, even when I hated it. After, when I've had enough distance to the location and the job, I realized what I took away from it. And that's something that we really want to say. Some jobs I love, but maybe I love them because they're easy for me. Maybe the jobs I didn't like were hard for me, but I learned something from every one of them. So it's a fantastic question. I like that. Thank you.
I just to add to that, I think you must find that in every role you do. Otherwise, you have to really rethink what is it that you're doing. It's important that you find that. And personally, in my career, I was able to do that in every role I had, whether it's completing a project in the field in a safe, timely manner, or more recently, one of the most fulfilling moments of my career I had is standing in front of a group of investors representing your company, being able to share your story, your company story, knowing that the company trusted you to do that, and having that sense of responsibility that investors, for example, looking at your story, your business line, your initiatives, they might be making their financial decisions based on that, based on what and how you say it. And that to me was one of the sort of most recent rewarding experiences that I had, and that combines both technical, commercial, and soft skills.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to share? Yes, Maria.
I think a commonality could be the love for achieving things in team, as a team. I think that probably joins all in academia or corporate or entrepreneurship. I think that sense of achievement when you work as a team, I think it's a commonality. We are integrators by formation. So when you achieve that, it's wonderful.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for that. Can we go to the next question?
Absolutely. Given the current greening of the oil and gas industry, what skills does the geophysicist of the future need?
I'll start there because I'm seeing this as a common thread as we move down to coding. Being able to write code, especially if you're in near surface geophysics, is really important. There's actually not a lot of like commercially available software, so you have to do a lot of that yourself. And I was doing a lot of it during my grad programs, and then I stopped doing it for a little while. Now I feel like I have to retake all these coding classes to remind myself how to do this again. And that's actually not always standard or required in your program, so just taking the initiative to do that will be really valuable, but I'm sure everyone else will have something to contribute there as well.
I can add to Blair's point. I think because all this screening is going hand in hand with digital transformation, the coding skills are really important, but also knowing what's happening around you is also important as well. So as much as you can. Don't absorb the fake news, but open your eyes and see what companies are doing, what directions they are going, what are the new undertakes that they are bringing into the companies. If you're looking for opportunities in the corporates, it doesn't matter if it's on the operator side or the service side. You have to see what direction the companies are going. And when you're learning about these things and you want to fit the portfolio, you have to make sure that you do it in an authentic way. Just getting a certificate of 1 hour doing coding on Coursera is not going to cut it. You have to actually be able to deliver the work if you get a job in those companies, just to avoid the further disappointments in the future. But it's kind of like looking around yourself and not isolating yourself in one place and say, hey, I got a petroleum geology or petroleum engineering degree. There's no future for me because there is a downturn. That is not how it works. Your domain expertise is your strength. So don't think that you have to underplay it, but you can apply it in other ways and in other senses.
Thank you, Ellie. So then, Jeff has a.
So what just I guess going on those 2 points, I think another key thing is that teamwork, working together in small teams. I think there's incredibly challenging problems that people are trying to solve, and trying to solve it just by yourself is going to be very, very difficult. But working on an integrated team with a diversity of skill sets, listening and cooperating and really collaborating to solve a problem, I think those are pretty important skills that you can learn starting as a student, and then you'll be using that throughout your career.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think that's particularly true in academia. There is a stereotype in academia, 50 years ago, that it was just the one scientist who brings in millions of dollars and they're doing the work. That is not the case anymore. If you want to be successful, you're working with interdisciplinary groups, you're working with teams across the country, across the world. To me, I see people who are successful right now are ones who are working with large groups of people. They're the ones who are getting the research grants, and they're the one making the discoveries. It's not individuals anymore.
Thank you, Blair. Next question.
Yes. My question is, how did the panelists decide on which specific discipline of geophysics they wanted to work in as professionals between geophysical data acquisition, reservoir characterization, seismic processing, etc.? Was it ever a conscious choice, or did it simply come from their first job experience?
Who wants to take this? Okay, Manika.
Sure. So I started being a geologist, like I said, but then I went on in marine geophysics and I sailed ships. We acquired seismic data. We went on various cruises to get ocean bottom seismometer data and so on, build ocean bottom seismometers. These were early days of OBS. And then I started working in a lab. And by the way, I get terribly, terribly seasick. Didn't stop me. So because that was fun. It was really a lot of fun. You sort of, throw up on one side, but then you acquire data on the other side. And so you're out in the boat. The work where you end up, it will be very different, regardless of what you think what you're going to do today. You will end up doing something very different. And what brought me to this work is just because I love to tinker with instrument, with equipment. People joked with me during my student years. Indeed, in Germany, they give you a hat with all sorts of specialities of what you do. And mine was a computer without any manual, because my peers told me, it doesn't matter what computer it is, you can hack it. You'll know how to fix it. You'll know how to work it. And I did, because I love tinkering with stuff. And so in the end, I realized a lab was really great for me. I go out in the field, collect samples and do stuff, but I bring it back. I make my own equipment if I can't get it from elsewhere, and I can work on stuff with my hand. I learned how to use a lathe. I learned how to do machining. So it's just fun to do, and you'll find what your fun is to do. And oftentimes you discover passion in something you never expected. So short answer, I stumbled into it.
Hey, Renee. Thank you, Manika. Renee, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think, you know, my career path is a bit different than some of the other panelists here. And my first experience, so I would say my career path has been purely through networking. And that was something that Blair had mentioned. And I think that that has played a huge role in my career path and my success. So my first job, my first internship was working in an open pit gold mine in Colorado. And I got that job because I just kind of threw my resume everywhere, you know, as a student. And then working in that mine and using software, the next summer, I then interned with the company that developed that software. And then I had a summer to learn about coding and programming, Python. And then because I had, you know, 3D software interpretation or 3D software manipulation experience, then I got another internship working for doing groundwater modeling. And so then from there I did, and so on and so forth. So all of these experiences that I've had have been because of networking and because they've kind of built on top of each other. So even though I had 3D modeling experience in the mining industry, well, that was really translatable to using 3D modeling for groundwater studies. And those are the kind of skills that, even though they're different applications, that's how I kind of move from one to the other. And a lot of networking has helped me with my career path and having those connections, because, you know, there's a lot of people on this call and there's a lot of panelists, but, you know, we have connections with each other without really even knowing it. And this is actually a really small community, and the networking that you build and the people that you connect with and build those relationships with can really help you and maybe drive you into a career path that you didn't even really think that you might be interested in, only because, you know, the industry and the people that are part of this community are very helpful in trying to develop people. You know, that's why we're all here trying to talk to you and encourage to talk to students and other people on this call, is because we want to help and we want to push people into the right career path. So I think building your network is vital in understanding of, you know, do you want to go into seismic acquisition or do you want to go into processing? It's also about knowing the people that you work with and how to fall into those different categories.
Oh, thank you so much, Renee. And I think there's a question that I would really like us to get to from Teresa, who says, what would be your advice on getting sponsorship when located in remote areas with fewer role models around, especially as a minority? I think that would be love to hear about that from you all. Who wants to go first?
I can take a shot at that while others think about it. I think the sponsorship comes with being able to communicate your ideas simply and effectively. So I think communication takes a big part of what we do to get folks to sponsor our ideas, and tenacity. Yes, there will be people not willing to listen just because of who you are. Because you have, I don't know, long hair, because you have, I don't know, 2 horns out of your head, whatever. So there will be always people who will find fault at what you do. And if you are part of the majority, there will be something specific about you that someone doesn't like. But it always takes beating down on doors, polishing doorknobs, and saying, this is what I do, this is who I am, so that you become such a big pain that they cannot do anything but to say, go away. What will it take to make you go away? And once you have an opportunity, to give it your best, because that's what is really being looked at. At the end of the day, you might be remote, you might be a minority, you might have things going against you, but no one can ignore when you are really excellent. And you have people whom you can approach. You have a network outside of the people who you are looking at for your funding, and they see you for who you are, for what you can do. And that's really what it needs.
I can add a little bit to Manika. You know, as I mentioned in my intro, I'm from Iran, and though women are not a minority in Iran, women in petroleum industry are minority. And in order to get into the petroleum industry, I tried really hard, and I was a really good student when I graduated from my MSc program at the age of 23. But I couldn't get in. It was hard. So I couldn't change the environment at that moment, but I decided to immigrate to create more opportunities for me. Now, I don't say that all the people that find, you know, doors closed at them, they should immigrate, but I did it. And immigration is not easy. You have to immigrate to know what it takes to be an immigrant. And coming to Canada, though it's a wonderful country, there are still, you know, things that are ahead of me that it kind of pounds on the fact that I'm still a minority. And being in the energy sector, that doesn't make it easy either. You know, as an entrepreneur, there are not a lot of women entrepreneurs in the energy sector, unfortunately. I attend a lot of, you know, startup conversations around oil and gas and, you know, new resources that are coming to the play. But out of maybe 100 men that are sitting around the table talking about it as innovators, maybe there are equivalent of 5 women who are running businesses. If you're younger, again, that's something that, you know, it's kind of rare within this industry. So the issues with being a minority and the issues with being in remote places where you can't find a lot of role models always exists. It's just, do you actually have it in you to change things for the better, for the good, to create opportunities, not just for yourself, but also for others around you. And maybe later on, you can help the other people that are left back in those communities without role models and be their role model. So that's how I would see it.
I would like to pitch in something. I just finished a book on sponsoring and mentoring. And one thing that really can advance a career is to find sponsors, and not only one, but up to 7 sponsors. And I have been a minority in many places. In Venezuela, I would be considered an Italian. In Italy, I would be considered a Venezuelan. In the US, a Latino. And in the Middle East, they don't know what I am. So in many ways, I am always in the minority side. And I would like to suggest to recognize and embrace when you are a minority. And if you are in a remote location, more so. And approach those leaders and tell them what difficulties you are facing, and if they can mentor you and explain what is that you are doing and what are the hurdles you are facing and what you are doing to overcome those hurdles. It has never been for me a problem to do that, and perhaps forced by the reality that I am facing, but that has helped me a lot. And also, let me tell you that many times your supervisors know you are a minority in their team. And the speed of your team is as fast as your slowest member. So it is in their favor that everybody is happy and working at the full speed, right? So as a guarantee of success, make sure you approach the leaders who you admire and let them know you need a sponsor, you want them to mentor you, okay? And take the courage to do that.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Ellie and Manika for chipping in here. Does anybody else want to add something to this? I think this topic of mentoring and sponsoring is very important because it speaks to privilege. And one of the important things that we have to also engage with is the privilege of who is in a position to do what. Jeff, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important question. One thing is through the SEG, there's a lot of opportunities. And from your question, I infer you might be a student. And if there's possibilities of getting engaged with the student chapter, looking for SEG scholarships, potentially looking for SEG travel grants, or some of the programs where they bring student leadership programs where they bring students in from all around the world. I think these would be excellent ways to basically get your foot in the door, meet people that can start you on career paths. And I think many of us here have known individuals and met individuals in similar ways coming from remote places who, you know, made that application letter, was accepted, and then their professional lives have been completely changed by their experience. So I'd say, you know, tap into the existing networks that we have here. The SEG Women's Network is an excellent example for one to see what opportunities there are.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. So this is one way for me to kind of remind all our student participants that now you know at least 7 professionals in the geophysics field that you can reach out to and say, hey, I listened to your panel and I love what you said about XYZ, and start a conversation from there. Don't let the opportunity slip away from you. Okay, next question. Shelley, can we?
Yeah. What varieties of opportunities are available in environmental policy, and what is the best way to get into that part of the geoscience field? Renee has her hand up.
I think I'll just touch on this briefly because part of my job is on the regulatory side. So I forget who mentioned it, maybe Katja, that said that, you know, there's professionals who work, you know, maybe on the operator side or, you know, on the industry side that have to interface with regulators so that we're meeting in the middle, so that we both understand each other. And of course, like there's opportunities as a geoscientist to do that work. You can do that with the Bureau of Land Management or the EPA. There's lots of opportunities there within the government side to help transform policy and update policy as, you know, as the work environment changes and as regulations need to change. So there's lots of opportunities there. I personally don't rewrite policy, but there are people in the government side that do that. If you're interested in that, I think that some of the things that you have to be good at are just really good at detail. You know, if you've ever read through you know, federal regulations, or you know, and most countries and states have their own regulatory books, and you have to kind of have almost a lawyer perspective of being able to read everything and read between the lines and interpret all that. So if that's a path that you're interested in, maybe that's one aspect that you may not have realized, is you have to be really good at communicating, really good at technical writing, and also kind of memorizing and following detail within text. And so that's part of my job too, is going through those books and making sure that things are being done according to the regulation or rewriting those. And there's lots of opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I'll also chip in here too. This is going to be coming from a U.S. perspective, mind you, but there are also internships. Like, you know, we think of internships with the science companies or with oil and gas. There are internships where you engage directly with policymakers. So here in the U.S. with AAAS, the Association for the, American Association for Advancement of Science, something like that. Through them, through Geological Society of America, through American Geophysical Union, through all these professional societies, they actually hire interns to come in and work with policymakers for a couple months to a year. Some of them you have to have a PhD, for example. Others you can have just a bachelor's or a master's, and you get paid to learn how to work with policymakers, how to engage with them on these opportunities, how to do research. And so I would imagine that that's true in other countries. So really look at your professional societies when you want to kind of do some things with policy. They have some really good resources for you. And
I mentioned early on that staying current is really important. And I think it's a very good question. And this particular field is going to be more and more critical to every country in the world as we're moving again towards sustainability, towards building those goals and executing on those goals. You really need to have experts in this field, because this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to take to really move us in that energy transition domain. And every country is going to be looking at setting those right regulatory frameworks. So if you're able to contribute to that domain, I think you will have a long-term perspective on things and a great success following you. This is a very important field.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's take a next question.
Okay. What advice would you have for recent grads interested in E&P on navigating downturn periods?
Manika?
Volunteer. You might need to do other jobs for a living, but you need to stay current in geoscience. And that's the best advice. Someone told me that many, many years ago. And I realized that's really what has gotten each one of us, I'm sure, can tell you a story about looking for jobs in the downturn. We have managed doing various other jobs that are really not what our passion is, but at the same time staying current, reading papers, volunteering for various other organizations, for example, SEG, AGU, AAPG, whatever society might be your home, find a home in a professional society, volunteer for various committees. That gets your name out there, people get to know you, build your network. Without that, it's going to be very difficult. So what I have found is to stay engaged, regardless of what your day job might be. It's hard, it's not easy, because then you're doing two things, right? But you do have to stay engaged. Otherwise, you go out of relevance.
And start as a student. You can volunteer as a student. Actually, all professional societies now are making specific positions for early career because they recognize that they didn't have early career representation, and that was impacting them. I was president of an international organization while I was a graduate student. I don't actually recommend that, but I'm just trying to point out that you can do those things while you're still getting your graduate degree, while you're a student, while you're early career, and that is the best time to do it because that's when you're building your network.
One thing that I would add, and it goes with Manika's point on networking and connection. So, and you know, being involved with societies, both on the engineering side and geosciences, it will provide you with a vast number of people that you can reach out to. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you send random messages to people and, you know, that they would block you, but you can start having a conversation about their experiences. How they got there, and just get yourself known, because they would think of you when they do have an opportunity. And a lot of the positions that are getting filled in especially E&P, they're not through the process of the application, because they receive thousands and thousands of applications. And a lot of the times you're not going to stand out because there are so many good people out there. And the way that they write their resumes maybe is better than yours, even though if your qualification is better than them. So knowing people and talking to people, that is a big deal. And thanks to social media, that's one thing that it made it easy. You can reach out to people through social media very easily. You can be a connection of the CEOs of E&P companies and see what they are doing. What are their strategies? You can engage with them with commenting on their posts and have them to have a conversation with you. It never hurts. So that's one thing that I would say. We are digital native. We grow up with social media. Use it in your advantage.
Thank you, Ellie. That said, most of our panelists are on social media, so LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, reach out to them. You can find them on there. And maybe if you want to throw in your handles in the chat as well, I guess, that wouldn't hurt.
I just also wanted to elaborate a little bit further on the concept of building that successful network. And I think the importance of building the foundation roots. What I mean by that, if you look at your network as a tree, and you really need to start with that network, that's real, the people that you work with, there are people that maybe were in your class. If you're a student, if you're early career, there's always going to be people that know you, that can vouch for you. And if you build and take time for that foundation, then you can grow those branches, and then you can really be more successful with that social media side of things. So take your time, be patient, and be flexible, and build those foundation roots to then extend from. I think it's really important.
Thank you for that. Next question.
Yes, I'm wondering, what are the panelists' insights on the role of geophysicists on climate action? Is geoengineering, especially CCS, a viable pathway for aspiring geoscientists?
I'll start on this one. So actually, at the Kansas Geological Survey where I work, our energy research section, that is like one of the major focus for them. And I see so much potential in this field. And especially because geophysicists are often assumed to just work with ONG, right? Like so getting us in this new field, moving towards renewables, really kind of expands that opportunity and that expectation of what does a geophysicist do. And I would love to see geophysicists become more engaged in the energy conversations and the climate change conversations.
This is Maria. I just finished an article with Anna Shagnesi and Imi Kaslin, mapping the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, into all areas of geophysics. And if you take a look at that, you will find an amazing variety of ways in which geophysicists can support the climate change. Not only by CCUS, carbon net zeroing and other options related to oil and gas, but also about life underwater, massive farming on land, monitoring life on Earth, and the oceans, contaminations, and many other factors that affect climate change. So I encourage you to take a look. That will be published, if not in December, the leading edge, it will be in January. Thank you.
Maybe I'll jump in here with an observation, is that in the conversations I've had with some research managers of major E&P companies, they actually have a surprising number of geoscientists who are dedicated to energy transition for their companies in green directions. CCS is an important part. Also, geothermal is an important section. So I think there will be some very interesting jobs going forward in the coming years. And I think us in academia probably have to have a little bit of a rethink to make sure that we're, have the right pathways to help students move forward in these roles with the technical skills they need to succeed within industry.
And there will be more opportunities in the industry of that nature. I can speak for my own company, TGS. We own the largest library of subsurface data, and we are looking how to apply it in energy transition for different applications. Again, geothermal, CCUS, and we have a lot of technical folks, geoscientists, geophysicists, processing geophysicists, and they're all inspired and really interested to be part of that, to really understand how we can repackage, how can we rebrand the data in order to really contribute in that domain. So I think the opportunities will accelerate in that particular segment, for sure.
And if I may add to that, there are many things we still don't know. Even if you look at geologic sequestration, in the geophysical knowledge that we have is needs a lot of work, because we need to ultimately get to permanence. We need to be able to say that we have put CO2 in the subsurface, and we know it's not going to escape out, and we know exactly where it is, we know how much is there. All of those fields in geophysics need refinement, need more work. So if you might think of current, what we know today in geophysics, we are still inadequate in our knowledge to map and track and quantify CO2 that we put in the subsurface. So there's plenty of work to do here.
Yep. Thank you for. I think this geophysics and climate change is going to be an important topic going forward. So we still have a lot of questions coming up and less time, so we'll try to take as many questions as possible. We may not get through all of them, but of course our panelists are reachable. So this is just to give you a heads up if you are wondering that your question is not being answered yet. Okay, next question.
This says, I'm really interested in seismology and having a background in it. What can I do to achieve this? If you could recommend a course, text, or any field work opportunities.
And I assume that the person who's asking the question has a geoscience degree or a physics or a math degree, because that's where you would start so that you have the tools needed. And then if you're looking to do something, you can start with a project. Take wherever you're located, go to the earthquake locator websites, map up all the earthquakes. You can read on how to solve for source, both magnitude as well as mechanisms. And so those are easy to learn techniques that you can develop. There are enough wiki pages. There are societies that put out tutorials that are free. There is a lot of free information out there that allows you to look into earthquakes data and free earthquake data that you can access. So I would start there. I'm sure others have other suggestions as well, I'm sure.
Jeff, do you seismologist background?
Yeah, no, I think Manika has it right. I think that there are some incredible resources out there. Part of it goes back to Python. If you start playing around with Python, then you realize that there's incredibly powerful packages that the seismological community has put together. They have reproducible scripts that basically within 10 lines of code, you can download earthquake information from global observatories and start plotting up and playing with it. So there's a large set of resources that are out there. If it's exploration seismology that you are interested in, there's also open source packages like Madagascar. The SEG hosts a number of free data sets that you can use to explore your craft. So there's a lot of resources that are out there. And if you want to follow up on what some of them might be, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have through email.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that there are also even some software packages that are open source that you can access and use with this type of work. Thank you.
Next.
Do we have a next? Yeah.
Okay. My question is, would you say a business degree is necessary for someone interested in moving up to a more managerial position? Also, what other skills in your personal experience have been important to develop/learn for a management role in the future?
I can try that. No, you don't have to have a business degree to be an effective manager, to be a leader, to inspire people to a common goal. You can learn from the job. You can learn from experiences. It helped in my particular case to get there faster maybe, or to really take advantage of it, but you don't have to. As you grow in your role as you master your skills, as you understand what your strengths are, and ultimately, what is it that you want to do? You know, in big companies, they always ask you a question. I remember having to answer that 15 years ago. What do you want to do in 5 years' time? Although one thing I did learn from being in oil and gas for 20 years is that you cannot plan ahead further than maybe 3 years. So having a 10-year plan just doesn't work. So I think the advice that I would give in this particular case is just be flexible, be open to potentially taking some risk, and persevere. I think if you set your mind to be working in a more managerial rather than technical domain role, it could be equally rewarding. You just need to, again, set your mind to that and persevere. And you can do that without a degree.
And I would add to Katja's point, I think that's a really good point, that you do not need to have an MBA or any administration degrees from any universities. And by the fact that it's really expensive, you know, you spend $100K on getting an MBA, you know, it's not a necessity to be a manager. I would distinguish manager role from a leader role a little bit, because there are some things that could be a little bit different. But if you're new and you're getting to a corporate job and you want to be a manager, number one, you have to be a people person. You have to know how to motivate people to deliver within a specific time with an allocated budget. And that's a big deal in terms of managing things. You can start with smaller roles like project management and deal with the project team. And then you can move up the ladder if you are doing a good job and you're actually liking it.
Yes, I would like to add that not necessarily advancing a career means becoming a manager. You can become an expert, and that is another, you know, in the technical ladder, let's say. You can become a very recognized expert in your field, and that is very rewarding and very satisfying as well. How to recognize if you want to advance a technical or a managerial career is exactly what Ellie was saying. If you are a people's person and you enjoy leading people and being around people, or if you enjoy your reading and your working on things in your research, in your lab, which is very different, and digging into, you know, a specific subject, that will certainly differentiate what is that you want to do.
Thank you, Maria, Angela, and everybody else. So we have a little less than 10 minutes to go. And so I would, I know we still have some questions that have not been answered, but I also really just wanted to be able to give all our panelists the opportunity for some parting thoughts, so that to share maybe what you got away from this panel experience, what you might suggest for the future, and also maybe some advice that you really want to give our participants that we did not get to. So I will just start and kind of go around and give everybody that opportunity to, maybe in a minute or less, to kind of share their parting thoughts. Do you want to start with Renee?
That's such a loaded question, but I think the one thing that my biggest takeaway from just being on this panel is that, you know, everyone has such a unique journey, and there's no right way to go about your career. You know, like you might think that your career path is to, you know, be the manager of a big company or something, and things can change. You know, your life changes. You have to move, or you decide to start a family, or whatever it is, and all of those factors can change your career path, and it's okay to have those changes and have to pivot. And it's okay if it's not exactly what you want. I think it was Manika that said that you've had some terrible jobs, you know, and that's just part of growth, and that's just part of, you know, your path of like, you don't like it, okay, well, find something else and move on and change. And now in today's climate, it seems to be that you do have to kind of jump from job to job or change careers a little bit in order to move up, or in order to find what the best fit is. So I think that's my biggest takeaway, is that everyone here has shared that they've done, little jobs here and there, and they've pivoted. And I think being flexible is a big part of advancing your career.
Thank you, Renee. So Katja, do you want to give us some parting thoughts?
Well, this was really really inspiring, just to listen to different opinions and get some great questions. With respect to kind of a few words of advice, I think one sort of thing that keeps coming back to my mind over this really, really tough year that we're all experiencing with COVID, with market conditions, around Women's International Day, before COVID, I was actually attending a luncheon. Maybe some of you have been there for some of the, where 25 most accomplished energy executives, women, were celebrated. And the speaker was Colonel Nicole Makowski. She's a retired Army officer. She's the first female Thunderbird pilot. We think we're in a non-diverse industry, think of her. And she said a few things, and this was before COVID actually. We didn't know about it, but she said, self-doubt is a headwind. Change is a headwind. Unexpected is a headwind. So turn into your headwinds and power up. And I thought a lot about it these days. And she also said something about sometimes you need to yield to overcome. And I thought it was really great words of wisdom that I would like to pass on.
Thank you.
Power up.
Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. I think I'll take those to heart. Manika?
So I'll touch on something. Especially, first of all, this has been fantastic. I have learned so much from every panelist, and you, Hendratta, from asking questions, and Shelly Jo, to just keep the way you answer and ask. So this has been a learning experience also from the questions. The one thing which perhaps we have not touched on, which I would like to mention here as a parting thought, is you will have doubters in you. You will have people who will be against you. The headwind that Katja has spoken about. The key thing, what I've learned from all of that, is to say, it's perhaps not personal. It's not you. You have to be able to separate between discrimination that is against a whole, whatever it is that you represent, and against a shortcoming that you might have. And that separation is what we sometimes forget, because sometimes we stunt our own growth by saying, oh, they're saying this because they're against me as my tribe, whatever I might be, whatever I might represent. But no, maybe it is my personality. So find other people and see what the commonalities, maybe some things that you're taking personally and saying this is against me, might not be really against you, but might be a way of discriminating against some property which people associate with you. And some might be what you're doing. And that ability to differentiate is hard, but is needed, much needed. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. Thank you for this opportunity. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Manika. Blair?
Yes, so my advice would be to test your limits, but also know your limits. My position is doing 3 or 4 different things. Then I also have like a side job on the outside of that, running an NSF grant. I test my limits because I love doing different things, but I've also learned that I have to be able to say no when I'm doing too much. And I've also learned that these limits are going to change pretty often every year. I have kids now. My limits have changed drastically. So, but that's not a bad thing, right? I'm just evolving as a scientist. I'm evolving in what I can do. And so if I had to say one course or skill that I also recommend learning is time management. time management organization skills will help you succeed more than you ever know.
Thank you, Blair. Jeff?
Yeah, so looking back on my career to date, the highlights for me isn't a particular paper that I've, published or anything like that. It's really the personal and interpersonal relationships I've developed with my colleagues. Those are the people who you spend a lot of time with and develop and you learn from. And so I think that cultivating those relationships and learning and growing, establishing mentors is very, very important. And I think one of the most important contributions we can do is to be empathetic. I think that, learning to understand and improving your ability to understand what people feel and why, I think that's a great skill, not just in the workforce, but in life to develop. And I think the world would be a lot better place if we were more empathetic.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Ellie?
Okay, this is hard because everybody gave all the good advice. So I think my advice would be like very toward what Jeff said. Though, publishing papers and when it comes out after a couple of years and 100 reviews is perfect. But, the thing that you need to make sure is to understand that all those soft skills that you hear about, those are as important as hard skills. So sure, you're a geophysicist, you know the wave equation and you know the convolution and you know everything else, but you also have to have the skills to attract people. You have to have the skills to make friends within your circles and surround yourself with smart people, with humble people that they know what they do and they are driven. It's so important to, if you're isolating yourself in your couch and you're watching Netflix 24/7, that is not how this is going to work out. So get out there and meet people, even virtually this year. But hopefully next year you can actually meet them in person, have coffees with people, and you would be really astonished of what relationships can bring you in the future. There are relationships that I built 10 years ago, and now they are coming into fruition. And it's not just like, the way of thinking about it in a material way. It's in terms of learning from others and their experiences. You don't have to have a, mentorship relationship written somewhere with a certificate. You can just learn from people by talking to them very easily. So.
Thank you, Ellie. We're almost at the top of the hour. So Maria Angela, do you want to close us up?
Just now the internet failed me. Are you listening? All right. If there is a piece of advice, is to extend your network and find a mentor and a sponsor as accelerators of your career. We are all aiming always to do a good job, yes, but that is not enough. You need a mentor, you need a sponsor, and several in different sectors, in different organizations, not only in your department, beyond that. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was a pleasure to participate in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to our awesome panelists. I really appreciate you all sticking with us for this couple of hours. This is it for our session. If there are any other follow-up questions, I think we will try to address those through other venues, through the WNC. Anything else, Shelley? I think we're good to go. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.